Good evening. I'm Rob Walter, Board Chair, and I'm going to call our Cabarrus County Schools Board of Education business meeting for Monday, March 16th, 2026 to order. As you know, we've had a storm that came through, and we've got several people that were going to come and present for us today, and will not be here. So we're going to have to play it by ear, be a little bit flexible. We had a presentation of colors, and we had a national anthem on the agenda. They cannot make it today, and I don't think you want to hear me sing, so I think we'll just stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you'd stand with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Well, board members, we need to set our agenda. We do need to remove the section 4 of recognitions. We will push those off till next month. Make sure that everybody has an opportunity to get recognized. So it may be a longer meeting next month, but with that, could somebody give me a motion and a second to adopt our agenda?
I make a motion we adopt the agenda as amended.
Thank you. So a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, we will continue to move along. To section 5, which is the approval of minutes. And we had 4 minutes on the agenda here for that. We have our mid-year planning session minutes from the 24th of January. We have our work session minutes from February 4th. We have our business meeting minutes from February 9th. And then we have our legislative meeting that we held on February 16th. You all had an opportunity to review those. Any comments, or do I need a motion to approve?
Motion approved.
Thank you, Greg. Second. Thank you, Melanie. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of approving motions for these 4 meetings, please say aye. For the minutes? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, with that, our minutes have been approved, and we will move right on to board chair and superintendent comments. And I do apologize for not doing introductions, so I'll do that real quickly. So the folks here on our dais, we do have Madison Little. Thank you for being here. Teacher of the Year, teacher representative. And we have Shannon Lancaster, our board member Catherine Moore, board member Sam Treadaway. Next to me is Dr. John Kopicki, our superintendent. And to my right, we have Greg Mill, vice chair, board member Pam Escobar, board member Melanie Freeman. Joining us today as our board attorney, we have Pat Kelly, filling in for William, and then Lori Furr, our secretary. Moving on, and our SRO for the evening, Chase Bowers, if you're here, thank you for being here. So I'll go on to board chair comments, and I really don't have too much. I know we all had spring break last month, and a lot of us were able to enjoy that, but I just want to share our approval or our appreciation for our custodians and our maintenance staff who went into the schools and worked hard last week to make big improvements and made a real difference, and we certainly appreciate all the effort that they made. And lastly, we've been using board docs for, well, probably since I've been on the board. So we are upgrading next month. So next month it'll be a different software system. It'll look similar, but same links that you'll use will take you to the new program. And what was the name of that one? Diligent. So just want to let you be aware of that. So it may look a little different next month. So with that, I will hand it over to Dr. Kopicki for the superintendent comments.
Thank you, Mr. Walter. So as we prepare to start the 4th quarter tomorrow following today's weather delay, I wanted to inform the community about some of the state, national, and global accomplishments from our students and staff so far this year. Our 8th grader, Phenidra Beluso, is our 4-time district spelling bee champion from Harris Road Middle School. He won the Carolina Panthers Regional Bee and will be participating in the Scripps National Spelling Bee in Washington, D.C. in May. And I believe this is the 2nd year in a row that he is in Washington, D.C. competing in the National Spelling Bee. So congratulations to Phenidra, and we wish him all the best. 2 of our students have been named as 2026 Presidential Scholar candidates. Ritvi Dandy of Cox Mill High School and Chris Icahn of Central Cabarrus High School. So again, congratulations to them. Our Cabarrus County Schools Beginning Teacher of the Year, Kennedy Elmore from Cox Mill High, was named a finalist for statewide Beginning Teacher of the Year, which continues an ongoing tradition of our teachers being acknowledged and recognized at the state level, showing the outstanding educators in the classroom with our students. So congratulations to Kennedy, and we wish her all the best as she continues to further herself in this particular competition. The Cabarrus County Schools had 14 high school students who auditioned and were selected for the All Carolina Select Choir. Another great accomplishment by our choir. And the Cabarrus County School System, we would have seen tonight if not for the poor weather, but we will see them, I believe, next month, had 21 student athletes win championships this winter in either wrestling, indoor track, or swimming. So we look forward to honoring those state champions at next month's board meeting, and congratulations to all of those dedicated athletes. And then many of our VEX teams across the district have qualified for the World Championships, including 3 teams from Weinkoft Elementary, 3 teams from Winkler Middle, and 1 team at the Cabarrus Early College of Technology. I do believe this is the 3rd year in a row that our teams in the VEX competitions have qualified for the world competitions. So they will compete with students across the globe and in different countries as they continue to pursue the excellence in the VEX robotics program. So congratulations to them. A reminder to all that we have an upcoming job fair. We will host the Cabarrus County Schools annual district-wide job fair at Winkler Middle School on Saturday, April 11th from 10 to noon. For more information, please visit our district website or feel free to call our Human Resources Department and they will update you as to the details of the career job fair. The upcoming Youth Arts Month Festival at Gibson Mill. Please make plans to attend this year's annual Gibson Mill Art Month Festival. It's April 17th from 5 to 8 p.m. And this has become one of our most attended events in the district, and it celebrates, as you can see when you walk down the hallway, the incredibly talented visual and performing arts students from across our district. And then finally, the electric bus transportation forums. I want to remind our parents that Cabarrus County Schools will again use Parent Square to deliver electronic transportation request forms for the 26-27 school year. These electronic forms will be delivered through Parent Square on March 31st. The deadline for completing the electronic request will be Thursday, April 30th. Please make sure your Parent Square accounts are registered prior to receiving this form. Thank you, Mr. Walter.
Thank you, Dr. Kapicki. Move on to section 7, which is our guest speakers. We did have 2 speakers that had signed up. And again, they've reviewed our procedures. Each speaker has 3 minutes to present to the board, and I will go in the order that they've signed up. So we have Mr. John Dunlap. Are you here? And Mr. Dunlap is not here. So we will move on to speaker number 2, which is Michelle Williams. I see you, so we will welcome you to the podium.
My voice tonight to discuss the upcoming decision that could affect many families in Cabarrus County. I'm speaking both as a parent of a high school student in this district and as someone who works in education and cares deeply about the success of our students. To the district personnel, thank you for taking the time to review and present the data around the proposed testing calendar changes. I appreciate the effort that went into analyzing participation rates and looking for ways to support our students. I do have a few questions and considerations I hope the board will reflect on before making a final decision. The data shared shows that participation barriers were a major factor in why some students did not retest. However, transportation and scheduling challenges affect families in many different ways. Extending the school day for all students so late in the year may address one barrier, but it may also create new ones for families who rely on after-school jobs, childcare responsibilities, or other commitments. I would also be interested in understanding whether other options were considered that could address the participation barriers identified in the data without requiring a full-day schedule for every single student. The presentation also noted that students performed better when retesting occurred closer to the original exam date. That suggests the timing of remediation may matter just as much as the length of the school day. If that's the case, it may be worth exploring ways to provide targeted supports earlier in the process rather than extending the day afterwards. I have a question about logistics. How will students be identified for remediation if scores are not immediately available, especially for courses like English 2? And what will the school day look like for the majority of students who will not need remediation? While it was mentioned that parents can sign their child out early, many families may not have the flexibility to do that. Testing days are already mentally demanding for our students. After several hours of standardized testing, fatigue is real. It would be helpful to understand how the additional time would be structured to ensure it remains productive and meaningful for our students. And I also want to acknowledge that teachers and staff will play a major role in implementing any changes that is made. Ensuring that any schedule adjustment is manageable for them while still meeting students' needs will be important for its success. And ultimately, I support efforts to help students succeed and to remove barriers that prevent them from demonstrating what they know. My hope is simply that the board continues to explore multiple approaches and carefully weighs the impacts on students, families, and staff before moving forward with this decision. Thank you for your time and your consideration, and for transparency, my name is Michelle Williams, and I'm running for school board here in Cabarrus County. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Williams, for the thoughtful analysis of our proposal. And that was the last speaker that we had for this evening. So we're going to move on to section 8, which is our report section. 8.01 is committee reports from board members. Any board members had sat on any committee meetings over the last month that want to share give us an update on those? Anyone? All right. Nope. Catherine.
We had safety committee meeting last month, and we had a great presentation from Atrium Health on different scenarios on how to handle crisis after school hours. We think about and train for crisis during the school day, but sometimes we don't think about after school. So it was a great presentation, and again, I think I shared at the last meeting. I was sitting with some school personnel that could talk about how these new new security helps with crisis after school too. So again, I always say I appreciate this committee, and I always leave feeling really good about the safety of our schools.
Very much appreciate you participating on that committee. Anybody else? Pam.
Our interns are having a great semester so far. I want to thank Dr. Williams and his team for speaking to them last week and talking about human resources. I just think it's always really helpful for students as they start thinking about their futures to understand, how human resources, not just at the school district level, but, globally will affect them. And there was a lot of good conversation and questions, so I just appreciate everyone's time for that. And yeah, school year's almost over. It's crazy. So we've got 2 more sessions coming up with other district staff. And then for those paying attention or listening, just wanted you to know that we're going to be opening up the application for next year's students. So it will be obviously communicated through Student Square and also Parent Square if parents know of any rising juniors and seniors who would be interested in learning how we function as a board.
And how many spaces are available for that?
That's sort of like a game day decision based on on what we get.
How many do we have this year?
This year we had over 20 board interns, close to 30, and so that's probably the capacity that we can handle, but we'll evaluate based on interest. And we're hoping that we have every school represented. We got pretty close this year, but we would like representation from every school.
Oh, have Mr. Farr help us get the word out for that. Thank you. Anybody else? All right, so we move on to section 9, which is the approval of our consent agenda. These are the items that we had some discussion on last week, and all agreed that we had enough information to make our decision on these items. So if that's still the case, please need a motion and a second to approve our consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Pam.
Second.
Thank you, Catherine. Any further discussion on the consent agenda? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, our consent agenda is passed. And now it's time to move on to section 10, which is our action items. We have a couple of those tonight. And we will start with 10.01, which is our long-range capital plan. And we're going to welcome Dr. Bowers and Mr. Cohen to the podium. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We appreciate that. And good evening to you, sir, members of the board, and Dr. Kopicki. If you recall, 2 weeks ago, Mr. Cohn and I had the privilege to be able to stand before you and deliver our recommendation for what would be our long-range capital plan for the 2026 planning year. That came on the heels of a presentation that was offered by Mr. Sturts, who was representing Sturts LLC, and then also Mr. Brian Palmer, who was representing, Matthew Palmer, who is representing North Carolina State, the Institute for Research on Transportation and Education. Both those gentlemen had an opportunity to be able to outline some of the work that they've done in conjunction with us over the preceding months. As I had mentioned at several board meetings ago, we sought and solicited their input to be able to help us look at our facilities planning, our long-range master planning, and our capital construction planning from a third-party perspective, just to ensure that is there anything we had overlooked? Did our assessments and our analysis align with what the data shows from a facility condition standpoint, from a growth standpoint across the district, and also from a current utilization as it exists within each of our facilities? They had a chance to present their findings to you, and the reassuring piece to this is that many of the projects we had identified aligned with their findings. So certainly we found comfort in that. We also had some things to which we reviewed that they offered that were key takeaways for us moving forward in the planning process. Throughout deliberate conversations with the board, we've had a chance to certainly solicit and entertain your feedback in this year's plan, which we greatly appreciate. And has been so informational and purposeful for us to be able to deliver to you what we feel is a very sound and a very data-driven and a very aligned capital plan for the next 10 to 15 years that will certainly serve the needs of our community, our students, our staff, our families. So with that, I'm going to pause, and Mr. Cohn and I are here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, board members, you've reviewed this a couple times. Any questions, comments? All right, so again, just the difference, we've got deferred maintenance on this year.
Yes, sir, that is exactly right. And again, one of the efforts behind that was to make sure that we identified a specific place to ensure that we were able to address some of those needs moving forward and make the county aware that these are things that have to be recurring items every time we bring the plan forward for there.
And then our understanding that the county is considering a referendum, I guess, for November that may have some of our projects on it as well.
There have been some preliminary conversations back and forth about the county's willingness to look at entertain a bond, and certainly those conversations have been productive, and we're certainly optimistic that that will find its way moving forward.
Because otherwise it's hard to get a lot of these done otherwise. But
you're absolutely right.
They did want a priority order. This is our priority, essentially, right? The list of deferred maintenance projects for number 3, is that listed somewhere?
Yes, sir. So we do have that. So that was submitted. It was part of an accompanying document that we presented last week for the board as well. That was an attachment. We were able to identify what are 12 specifically identified prioritized packages. Each package that we were able to outline includes a list of HVAC units, roofs, and parking lots. The same list was then shared with the county for their planning efforts and their purposes as well, so they know exactly what those needs would be should we have to more or less itemize those and present them moving forward.
But we're approving our capital plan with that as an attachment.
Yes,
and
sir.
Presenting that to the county so they can determine what they may be able to fund, what they can't fund, what they may be able to put on a bond, what they can't put on a bond. So
yes, sir, and I would offer that the capital plan is just that, is a long-range facilities master plan for us. Should that be used to drive conversations around the bond, that would be a great starting point. But irrespective of that, we do present this to say, if there were or were not, this is still what we'd like to make sure that we approve moving forward.
they've asked us for a priority basis. So these
Yes,
are
sir, that is correct.
our priorities. Okay, anybody else before we approve this? Okay. Go ahead, Pam.
I want to again say thank you and reiterate what said a couple weeks ago, which is that this is based on data, that is not just based on a wish list. This is not, that this is factually based, and it's a need. It is not a want. It is not a wish. It's not a dream. It is like our students are moving here, and they need to have the proper facilities for us to continue to be an award-winning school district. This is what we need to be successful. So I just want to say thank you, and again, reiterate my thanks for moving up the middle school on number 5, again, because addressing growth in that area is much needed, not just because I live over there, but it's because we have the numbers. We had someone else look at them. They're not just ours. It's based on data. So thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Melanie?
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate your work. Can you clarify for me, and sometimes these slides are small and they don't expand, there was a big jump in the middle school, the cost of schools from the 25 to the 26. I'm looking at, was that not true on the 11 and 12? Well, I don't have the slide up here right now.
Are you referencing the middle school auditoriums or Northwest Cabarrus Middle School?
Is that for 2 auditoriums, or is that
That's
each?
for 4. That's for 4. We combined all. So we did have 2 blocks originally for 2 of the middle schools, 2 each. And what we did is we combined all 4 of those projects into one block on this data sheet. So it did get higher from the previous year, only because we merged it into one.
But that is for all of
That
the
is for all 4
auditoriums,
of
so
them,
that's
yes, ma'am.
not per.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
is the same thing true of the increase in the school prices too, from one year to the next? Did they go up that much?
Those are driven more by the escalation that we see in the industry and making sure that we align what this proposed ask may be to the county, that it has, some true value to it in the terms of what we see in the industry as a whole with our cost increasing. So that's why those numbers change.
Okay, so we're looking at, if we don't do something, they're just going to keep rising.
They're going to keep getting more expensive, yes,
All
ma'am.
right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Thank you, Pam. So a motion and a second to approve the capital plan for 2026 as presented. All in favor of that motion, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, that capital plan for this year is approved.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And we'll move on to 10.02, which is a reciprocal emergency access agreement for Wolf Meadow Elementary School. And Brian, you're still up there, so
Yes, sir.
tell us about this.
So a couple weeks ago, we presented to you the agreement we've been working on with Red Bull between the Board of Education, Red Bull, and the City of Concord for a reciprocal emergency access easement agreement through the Wolf Meadow property into the new Red Bull campus that's being constructed. We had asked that this item be put onto action because we were unsure that if there was going to be some amendment to the language within that agreement between when we presented it a couple weeks ago and tonight. It is safe to say there has been no changes to that language. City of Concord Council has approved it last week at their meeting. So again, tonight, I'm just bringing it before you for your approval. That way we can provide it to Red Bull.
Okay, any further discussions or questions? And our legal's okay with it? All right. Need a motion and a second to approve this agreement. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Shannon. We have a motion and a second to approve this reciprocal agreement for access at Wolf Meadow Elementary School. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, thank you, Brian.
Thank you very much.
That passes. Moving along, 10.03, which is a 2025-26 academic calendar revision that we had discussed at our previous meeting. So, welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Walter. Good evening, Dr. Kopicki, members of the board. At our last meeting, I presented a proposal to extend high school final exams to 2:30 p.m. with the goal of overall goal with improving student achievement and addressing transportation inequities tied to retesting during our high school final exam days. Since then, we've listened carefully to the concerns and the perspectives shared by board members, staff, and members of our community. And in response to that feedback, we're bringing forward an alternative proposal this evening. This revised plan would extend final exam days not to 2:30, but to 1:00 p.m. It maintains the time needed for meaningful review, remediation, and retesting for our students, while also addressing many of the concerns raised over the last few weeks. Joining me tonight is our Assistant Superintendent of High Schools, Mr. Gordon Palmer, who will walk you through the details of this updated proposal.
Chairman, Dr. Kopicki, members of the board, to review from last week, our goal is to provide more support, more preparation, and opportunities to improve outcomes for our students. So that is really the goal of this change, especially allowing us to change along with the state changes. So as Dr. LeGrand mentioned, we propose still an early release that is in the calendar now, but just extending that slightly to 1 o'clock instead of changing it to a full school day. A 1 o'clock early dismissal for traditional high schools means that there will be more opportunity for face-to-face interactions with teachers, more preparation for upcoming exams and remediation, more opportunities to improve outcomes. This also, like I mentioned, enables us to evolve with the state changes that the state made this year. So the student benefits would be they would have a second opportunity to improve their exam grade, which we know that their final exam grade counts for 25% of their overall score in that class. That could improve their GPA. It would improve eligibility for programs such as NC College Connect, which is new 2 years ago, greatly improved this year. And you may have heard at the beginning of the year that students who had a 2.8 GPA or higher were eligible to have basically immediate acceptance into 53 universities and colleges in North Carolina. So when we think about that impact, that it could impact their GPA and it could have an impact on their NC College Connect, that is a very valuable piece of information. There is access, they could access additional opportunities to earn industry recognized credentials in their CTE classes. For some students, this means that they could maintain athletic eligibility. They could receive district support from teachers to clarify misunderstandings before their end of course exams, like we've mentioned last week. Instead of not seeing their teacher for 3, 4, or more days, they would be able to see their teacher the day before their exam. And they could also participate in review sessions, like I mentioned the day before. This could strengthen student outcomes, build student confidence through face-to-face interactions with teachers, pass their courses, achieve proficiency on EOC exams, qualify for credit recovery, and graduate on time. A lot of times students unfortunately have to graduate in the summer and will not graduate with their classmates in May. This could improve their outcomes where they could potentially graduate in May. Ideally, this also provides just a little bit of extra time to improve communication to students that need to retest or need additional support, or maybe need support through credit recovery, through retesting, or preparing for their exams that are upcoming. One of the pieces of information that we got in our first attempt at this in the fall is that we could really improve our positive communication, and just having this little bit of extra time after final exams would allow us to allow the students to have a nice lunch, decompress a little bit, and work with their teachers and have strong communication from teachers and school staff. The teacher and instructional benefits would provide targeted review for exams. Teachers would maintain their full planning periods. So 3 out of the 5 days, they would maintain their full planning period, and 2 out of the 5 days, they would have double the amount of planning period time, because one would be their planning period day where they wouldn't have students to review with, and the last day we are requesting that it stays the same as a half day, so they would have double planning time the very last day of school, where that would still be the normal early release. They can keep instructional content fresh before testing, support students needing additional assistance. This would also create consistency among our schools, where early colleges and Concord High School, the first 5 days of testing with their year-long classes, already have this, and they have full days for our early colleges and the first 5 days for Concord High School. Extending the high school exam day just slightly across the district could create consistency across school types, alignment with elementary and middle schools, and a unified expectation of student support during testing periods. So we already have some evidence, as I mentioned last week, I just want to share it again. From our early colleges that had full days, they retested 51% more students compared to traditional schools with half day, where we were releasing at 11:30, which really didn't give us hardly any time at all to do retesting or to work with our students to prepare them. This increased opportunity for students, like I mentioned, they can pass their classes, improve their exam scores, earn credit recovery eligibility, and potentially complete credential requirements. More instructional time directly translated into more opportunities for student success, as we saw in the early colleges. Again, another comparison from the fall, about 39% of eligible students retested in our traditional schools, whereas 87% retested in our early colleges with that additional time. As far as operational and logistical concerns, the benefits of this would, instead of having it as a full school day and just having kind of like an extended early release, we would take away the mass exodus of students signing out, because it would just slightly increase their half day or early release day, eliminating, I know there were some concerns for office staff and members that would have to take care of some of the logistical aspects of this. It would provide students a more structured lunchtime. I know right now we are very pressed for time when we're rolling buses at 11:30, trying to provide students lunch, get them any communication they need, and then roll out at the end of the year, that last 5 days. This would provide some consistency, a little bit more time for strong communication and logistics. And it would also, this plan would simplify the supervision and building operations. So one other concern that we had was graduation rehearsals, and I've already created a draft for our schools which would remain consistent with prior years with this proposal. How would the exam day look in the afternoon? Simply put, review, remediation, and strong communication. At this point, I will turn it over for any questions.
Okay, Dr. Kubicki, you want to add anything to that?
Not at the moment.
Okay. All right, board members, we have a new proposal, so we can talk about the alternate proposal or the original proposal, either one. Looks like the alternate is what the recommendation is. Go ahead, Melanie.
We got an email from Mr. Sane about the retesting data. Is that public on the board docs?
I'm happy to share that data. This is the same data that I shared 2 weeks ago in our conversation. Essentially what the data represents is our early colleges have full days to retest. That allows schools to find those students within the building, do some remediation, and then give them just the time in the day to offer the retest. Of course, the semester long traditional courses do not have those full days, as we're discussing. The major discrepancy is that our traditional schools retested 39% of eligible students. Our early colleges retested 87% of eligible students, simply because they had the full day available to those students. The other piece of information that was shared in that email in the chart is the discrepancy just in courses taken. So we've made a significant effort this school year to focus on Math 1. In Math 1, we were able to identify and retest 56.9% of students that were eligible for retest. We were able to get those students to retest. In other courses, that number dropped, mostly because it is not the high priority. In the event that we would have the full testing time available in this extended scenario that Mr. Palmer is referencing, we will be able to get that same number, ideally, across the board, across all tests, instead of exclusively in Math 1.
That was not my question. There was another retesting data that showed how many students were eligible and how much the grades were brought up, how many students actually tested. So that was the chart that I was wondering about, because we have, so my question is, clarify for me, who is eligible for retesting? Are all the students who want to how does that work?
Any student that is not proficient is eligible to retest.
Any student.
Any student that is not
So
proficient on the
when you
E2C.
say the eligibility is, and I just have my notes here, I don't have that thing up there, but the eligible ones were 31 to 57%
That's
of
correct.
our students were eligible.
So that means that 30, depending on the course, 30. So in Math 3, of the eligible students, we retested 114 of the eligible students, which was only 31%. Of all the students that could have retested, only 31% retested in Math 3. All the way up to 57% of those students in Math 1. Of the ones that were eligible, we got 57% to retest. I should mention, though, again, our early colleges that had the full day, that had some of this extended time, no matter what the course was, they got 87% of their eligible students an opportunity to retest.
So Melanie, Dr. Kopicki wants to respond to you.
Yeah, Mrs. Freeman, are you referring to the increase in the proficiency that resulted from the retesting the last time, that
Yes.
chart? Okay.
Yes.
So, to give you a point of reference to remind our colleagues in the board, in biology we retested students, we saw a 2.4% increase. In Math 1 we saw a 4.24% increase. And in Math 3 we saw a 2.33% increase. So, while those percentages may seem small, they're enormous when considering it goes into the overall total of the way the state grades us and gives us our overall percentage grade, okay? So we've seen the increase in retesting and what it can do, and the way we're doing it. Most school systems already do this. They retest their kids the way we're asking it to be done. I understand it's late in the game, but that's on us. We own that. But I do believe with 2 months' time before the school year ends, we could definitely accomplish this with ease. So I just say that to say that this is not, time-wise we can do it. But the other thing here is, the reason I say is the percentage of available students that were retested was not as high as it probably would be given this new plan. So for instance, when we look at biology up 2.4% increase of those retested, we retested only 34.7% of the eligible students that could be tested. So the number probably will increase if we are given the time and the right plan that we put in place. And we would report back to the board whether we were successful or whether we failed. If we were successful, great. And if we were not, we'd report to the board that we failed and we got to rework the plan. But the point I'm trying to make, and I'll end on this, is we have seen increase in proficiencies with our kids once we retest them.
I think another data point too to keep in mind when we're talking about early colleges and they had additional time to work with their students, provide strong communication, transportation was available. They didn't retest approximately 5 students. Of our traditional high schools, they didn't retest over 800 students. So for me, what that says is there's 800 students who could have potentially passed their class. They could have potentially earned credit recovery, not had to come to summer school. They could have maintained their athletic eligibility. They could potentially graduate on time. So when I see a number that large, that's why we're coming to you with this plan so that we can support those students.
Yeah, and just to add to that, for example, Math 3, we retested 114 students. And of the students that were retested, 33% of them became proficient. So 1 out of 3 that we retested. So it's not a futile effort just retesting. I mean, we're seeing some pretty significant results. Math 1, 18%. So we're looking at approximately 20% of the kids who retested became proficient that second time around. In biology, 17.8%. So these are big numbers. And when we talk to other districts that are doing this, you know, our overall testing rate at traditional schools, as Mr. Palmer pointed out, is 39%. A lot of the other school districts in our area that are taking advantage of keeping students there for an extended amount of time are in the 80s and the 90s. And so you can see how that overall proficiency could be compounded if we had twice the amount of kids having an opportunity to retest.
Oh, you get a question.
My concern is the 800 kids that were not at proficiency level by the end of the year. And so my question is, with all the benchmark testing that we're doing, why do we still have this many kids at the end of the year who are not reaching proficiency, who are eligible for a retesting? And it seems to me that there should be an intervention or tutoring or something that happens before the end of the year.
I would say we are doing that. And when you keep in mind we have, this is off the top of my head, approximately 12,000 high school students, our proficiency rate being 7th in the state shows that we are providing those interventions and that we are preparing them. But I think there's always room for improvement and always more that we can do, and that's what we're trying to do with this plan.
Yeah, and we'd very much like not to have to retest any of them because they would, all students would pass the test this first time around. We have built in the recent years benchmark assessments for that reason, and we've seen increases in proficiency. Are we to the point where everyone is passing at this point? No, but we're closer than we used to be, and we'll continue to work towards that goal. But for those that don't pass, we want to give them that second chance to retest so that they do have that 20% or 33% chance of passing that second time around.
What is the score for proficiency?
It's a scale score and it's different per EOC exam.
It's determined by
It's
NCDPI.
not a letter grade.
No.
It's not a letter grade.
So the easiest way I can break it down is you can score a non-proficient, a 3, 4, or a 5.
Right.
So a 3 or higher is proficient. There's different scale scores for each test, and then there's different 100-point conversion scales per test as well.
And the cutoff is determined by the state based on the results. They determine the cut scores for what is a 1, a 2, a 3, or 4, or 5.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else on this side? Sam?
I applaud what we're looking at. I just feel like it's too late in the game to be doing this. I feel like this is the kind of conversation we need to have for next year, because I think most of you know how I feel about half days, but I just feel like we're in the fourth quarter, and I'm just not sure if this is the time for us to make these kind of changes. So I will not be supporting it. I'll be supporting the effort, but not necessarily the timing of trying to do it in a couple of months.
Thanks, Sam, for sharing. Anybody else on this side? Catherine?
Okay, I think you said at the last time that it takes 24 hours to get test results back. Okay, so day 1, there'll be no retesting, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so then we're still keeping those students there with no retesting. Okay.
Preparing for their exam the next day. Yeah.
Well, and what I'm hearing from students is that teachers do a great job putting reviews online. And so they're saying, what are we going to do? Go to class and teachers just going to go over the review that they've already have online? So that's one of the things I've heard from kids. Okay, one of our emails stated that you could still pass the course even if you weren't proficient on the EOC.
So technically, the final exam is 25% of your grade.
Okay.
So mathematically.
So if you've got a
yes.
high average, you could still pass. Would those students still be retested?
They would be eligible for retesting if they wanted to. So for example, if a student with a strong course grade failed the exam because they struggled with testing, or they had a bad morning, or for whatever reason, they would be eligible to retest to improve their grade. That's why I mentioned NC College Connect. For those students, it would be extremely helpful for them.
But you could be proficient on the EOC and still not pass the course.
If you had a very, the opposite of that,
Right.
if you had a very low, let's say you didn't do any of your work, which would
Right.
be hypothetical, but probably not.
Right.
reality, I guess.
Or if you just didn't grasp the concepts, you know. I mean, if you didn't
Tech-
grasp the
If you ask me to answer
concepts
technically,
yeah.
technically yes, you would be able to do that.
Okay, and we're just talking about really retesting 4 EOCs, because you said we would not be retesting English.
It would be 3 out of the 4, because English 2, we wouldn't get English 2 back in
Right.
time.
You're talking Math 1, Math 3, and Biology.
That's correct.
So most likely that would not really involve a lot of seniors. Could with Math 3, but
Math 3.
Being a test coordinator for many, many years, I ran around at the very last minute retesting, trying to find certified teachers to test and proctors. So do we have a plan of who's going to do this retesting, and whoever's doing the retesting, then who's going to do the review for their class?
Yeah, I think having the additional hour and a half each day provides a lot more time and support for our testing coordinators and for our staff to coordinate that.
Okay. What about AP students? Because they've already had their exams. So did they take a teacher-made exam for that course?
Students that are in AP or IB courses are exempt from their final exams based on taking, according to board policy.
So then what will they do?
So for AP students,
right, if they don't,
they would finish out their regular school grades for that day.
You know, I wish what we would do instead, because they can come back the last day and retest, correct?
That's correct.
Correct. Okay, I wish we would find a way to motivate those kids to want to come back, because there again, I know with testing, retesting, they've got to come in with a good attitude. And I just don't see that happening with this plan. I really don't. You know, I just wish, and I don't have the solution to that, but how can we motivate the kids who, you know, are not going to pass these courses to come back and retest?
I think something else to keep in mind, that last day is typically for students who miss the exam. So we also have to take into account, you know, we've got this plan and it provides us additional time to communicate and support students, but there are also students who, let's say, get sick the first day of testing. Right. So then they need to come, most of the time they need to come on that day, the last day of exams, as an exam makeup day. And that's typically what that is used for. So we also have several students who, if they miss an exam, they show up late to school and the EOC has already started, or they're sick, or there's a family emergency where they miss a day of testing. We also have to account for those students and support them, and providing this additional time will also support those students.
But we still are going to have students to check out at 11:30. I mean, those that, especially seniors, we're still going to have a lot leaving.
Yeah, and we typically have that on a daily basis. Students that leave early to go to CCP or other to work, or you know they flex half the day, and you know it's just something that our schools have processes for, and in that case we would enact the same process.
Well, you know, I agree with Sam. I appreciate y'all spending the time coming up with this alternative plan, but you know, I still just worry about those kids that have already committed to working those afternoons and needing to work, and so I'm probably not going to be able to support it, but I do appreciate you coming back with another plan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Shannon?
So I thought it would be interesting. Have you all pulled the data of students that live, like, I would call it a city school within the city limits, as opposed to students that live out Mount Pleasant, that Midland, Bethel area? What percentage of those students, or what difference is the ones that do return to the school for retesting?
So we did look at all of the traditional high schools retesting participation rates, I guess you could say, and they varied by school, and I would say it was less impacted rural, urban, based on transportation, as it was not having enough time to to support the students, communicate the information, although it could be partially where they reside could have an impact on that. Some of our more rural schools had lower participation rates. If I'm just thinking off the top of my head, like Mount Pleasant as opposed to a Concord or West Cabarrus.
Because they don't have a friend that can just swing by and take them to school.
Right, which this plan would support them having transportation.
Okay, my next question was, so that extra hour and a half won't be just for remediation. I know as ex-high school teacher, zeros kill a student's grade. So that would be an opportunity for students to make up all those zeros that they might have. Is that correct?
That could definitely support that.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the last thing is, since our last meeting, I did go out and look around at other school systems. I looked at the top 10 in the state, and it does seem like this is the trend. In fact, some schools were even given, looked like 2 EOCs in one day, which I thought that was a lot.
Yeah.
But it does seem like the trend across the state is going that way. So I guess that's what you all have seen.
Yes, and we've seen the benefits in our own district with early colleges, and as we look at other districts that have taken this path, it has shown increased student achievement. And our goal is strictly to increase student achievement in everything that we do, and this is what this is about.
Thank you, Shannon. Did everybody get the questions in? No, I guess not. Pam, go ahead, and then Greg.
Thank you. Thank you for going back, and thank you for listening to us and then also to the public. What I'm having a hard time right now is trying to figure out how to support this, because I don't know what the public thinks about 1:30 versus 2 o'clock or versus 11:30, right? So I appreciate that there's compromise in this. And I think it just goes back to what Sam was saying, is like, we're debating something, and I know you need us to make a decision now because we want to give people as much time as possible, but at the same time, I'm like, this is not enough time to give them, so it's challenging. It's one thing to tell a student who might have to work, but also a teacher, like, if you knew in August that this is what the calendar is going to be in May, you can plan for that. You can structure the whole semester properly. You can structure the whole quarter properly. I just, now we missed a day today because of weather. Like, I personally, even as a parent right now, I'm like, oh my gosh, graduation is now. It feels like it. We're talking weeks. And so it's just, I appreciate that this is more than us getting our scores up. While that's nice, I'm not worried about the school district's reputation. I do think it is important to recognize students' ability to fix that GPA for college acceptance, for that connect, what you were talking about, which is remarkable. And then also same thing for athletic participation. I see the benefits, but I am very uncomfortable making a decision at a business session on the same day that I'm presented the new option. So if we are going to vote on this today, I can't vote to support it, but that doesn't mean I'm against the idea of it. And so I don't know if there's a possibility. I don't know if we can delay this because we're getting it presented today like this without a heads up. I don't know what the board's appetite is for that. I don't know if people will feel different. Like, I'm still sitting here right now. I'm like, I don't know if I'll feel differently in a week. But I do not feel comfortable right now because there was so much feedback, which is very rare for us to get from students, teachers, staff. I mean, people calling in all forms. We've received it. We even received it tonight in the public hearing. So I can't make a decision today.
Greg, go ahead, and then Dr. Kapicki.
Sure. I also want to thank you for the compromise. I think that's a strong move, and I think you made a really good case tonight for some of the individual benefits for particular students. I don't belabor the point, but we have a couple of questions just for myself. You keep mentioning early colleges and the results that you saw there, but that's a very different population. 100% of those kids are on a college prep path. So are the early colleges always at a higher rate than the rest of the traditional schools on their retesting? And how much then was the difference in the early colleges over, say, if it was 87 last year, was it 80 the year before?
So this was one of the first years, and this was the very first year that we've retested in the fall. In the past, typically the early colleges did not have as much retesting because it was outside of the testing window. So if we were to compare previous years, it wouldn't be necessarily a fair comparison because it was always done kind of like a summer school model, as you can think of, which our early colleges typically didn't have summer school where our traditional schools did.
I mean, they were retesting. That opportunity was always available. It was just in the summer school.
After the school year.
After school, yeah. Keep in mind that the DPI allowed us to start testing within the school year just recently, which is what brought about all of this.
That's the changes that you referenced in the beginning when you said
that's
you
right.
Made some changes.
Yes, and so we used to have to wait until after the school year was over and then bring students back for retesting. The state now allows us to retest during the school year, which is what we're trying to take advantage of with this plan.
I guess what I'm driving at is there always been a disparity between the retest rate, whether it's in the summer or during the school year, between early college and traditional schools. I would expect there would be a large disparity in that.
That's not something that I reviewed based on just kind of apples to apples.
Okay.
I will say that under the new plan, the new state plan and allowance, we have seen an increase just overall in the increase in proficiencies, where before some students would come and it was after the school year had ended and we were at about a 0.7% increase, where now we're seeing much stronger gains when it's immediate.
I do not have an analysis of early college in previous years versus this year. I should mention last year in elementary and middle school, they had 10 full days to retest. That means that they would have had some 70 hours of time in which they could test, remediate, retest, do whatever they needed. Our traditional schools are going to have about 20 hours on those 5 days. And of course, those 20 hours include 16 hours in which they are in testing sessions. So they just have limited time. The fact that the early colleges were able to get above 80%, I attribute more to the opportunity to find, communicate, remediate those students than anything about that population. We had elementary and middle schools last year achieving very high rates simply because they had students on campus for the full day for those 10 days.
Just to clarify, those schools never had half days. It's only been high schools that get out.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
And then my other question then is, some of the response we get feels like maybe teachers weren't included as stakeholders in the development of that original plan. Do we have any building admins or teachers that were participating in the creation of this alternative plan?
So we discussed this with high school principals at their last principal meeting. I have not gotten any formal feedback from them since we've made the adjustment.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Dr. Ricky.
So, Dr. LeGrand and Mr. Palmer, I appreciate your presentation and your responses to the feedback they received at the last meeting. What I would say to the board is, I understand your concerns. We hear you, obviously. What I would say is, please don't delay the vote. If the vote is yes, great. If the vote is no, we will respect the board's direction, and then we will go back and develop a better plan for next year coming into the school year, so that we're better prepared. So we own that. I appreciate your patience in entertaining this. But again, I would just encourage you to vote, because delaying it doesn't do anything, and especially when we talk about time, it's not going to help to delay it longer. So I would just ask the board to vote. And again, I thank you for your feedback and your input. It's been valuable, and we've learned quite a bit here. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lepecki. And I think you did make a strong case for the benefit to students and to the school system. And then an hour and a half, I'm not sure if that's such a massive impact on a lot of people's plans, but an hour and a half to me doesn't seem like it seems like a compromise. Yeah. So I see, I'd be supportive of it, but what we have here is we have a proposal that extends it for the full day. We have a alternate proposal which extends the school day by an hour and a half. And then to Pam's point, if we don't have enough information, we can postpone the vote to our next meeting and have time for public comment. So I see those as our three options tonight, but we don't do anything without a motion in a second. So with that, if anyone wants to make a motion in a second, we're open.
I just wanted to make a comment because I won't be here next year, but I can speak as a high school teacher. If going forward we develop a plan like this in the future, there's two things we haven't mentioned that I think are grounded in truth, is that practice effect helps. You may not coach them up a whole lot in an hour and a half, but practice effect, taking the same basic test the second time makes a difference. And the other thing is, my experience with high school students is if they know they're going to have to take that test a second time, they're a little more laser focused the first time. So I just wanted to make those comments.
Thank you, Sam. Okay, again, we need a motion and a second on one of these options.
I mean, I would say that if either of these were to pass, and I think the one that's being recommended to us now is the compromise motion,
yes,
right? So I guess I would make a motion that we pass the compromised recommendation.
Okay. Do I have a second for that? If not, so we do have a motion and a second. Further discussion on the compromise motion to limit the day by an hour and a half for high school students. Okay. Comments on this particular motion? Or question? Further discussion on this particular motion? If not, we
I just want to say, I think the kids that were benefit from the retesting really don't have a voice that speaks out for them. I'm gonna leave it at that.
I need everybody to know that I understand the need for the retesting, and I definitely see the benefit in what it does with scores, with school letter grades, etc. I fear that with the decision, if it is to pass tonight, there's going to be a lot of rumblings, and that really does worry me a lot because I am a teacher and I want to make sure that we are supporting them and making sure that they have a voice in this. And so the question of were teachers incorporated into the plan that was being discussed, I think that moving forward, whatever happens tonight, that going into next year, that definitely is something that needs to be considered, because I think that it's valuable to feel like you have a voice and to know that you're being heard, and allowing them to be a part of that decision I think would be very beneficial. And also getting different perspectives of teachers that are teaching the EOC tested areas versus the teachers that are teaching classes that are teacher-made exams, if that makes sense. Those two separate things. I think it's important to have both of those perspectives within that form of meeting. So that's all I have to say. I just really, if this plan were to pass, I want to make sure that our principals and teachers are given the most amount of support possible, because from my own personal perspective, the next 9 weeks are some of the most busiest weeks of the whole entire school year, and they're the most exhausting as well. And so while a change may not seem so large, when you could call it a wrench is thrown into the plan, it does add extra stress, whether that's the point or not. So I think that just making sure that if that does pass, that there is a large amount of support that's present just to help get things running.
Very much appreciate your comments, and we have had lots of feedback from teachers. I don't know if they were involved in the direct developing of it, but we have certainly opened to, board has heard from several teachers. Okay, so we do have a motion and a second for the compromise plan. And since it looks like this will be controversial, how about let's raise a hand if you're in favor. We have 1, 2, If you're opposed, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that motion does not pass. So I guess unless there's another motion for another option, this item will move on to the next item. And I don't hear another motion for another item, so thank you again for all the work on that. We'll move on to 10.04, which is the E-rate spending proposal for fiscal year 2027. And we have Mr. Carl saying to the podium, and this again was not something we had discussed at our previous meeting, but due to the urgency of you need to provide information to the state, we're bringing it today.
That's exactly correct. Thank you. I apologize. This was not on the March 2nd agenda. So good evening, Mr. Board Chair, Dr. Kopicki, members of the board. This is our E-rate fiscal year funds proposal for the funded year of 26, the fiscal year of 26-27. We are required to provide a letter of intent of which bids we will accept from E-rate. I want to provide some background on what the E-rate program is, what our overall funding plan is, what we're hoping to do for this first year, and some background on why we are proposing a certain vendor for these funds as opposed to some of the other bids. We've got 3 bids to discuss. Our plan includes bids for access points, for uninterruptible power supplies, and for network switches. So just for some background, E-rate is a federal program across the country. This federal program began in 1996 to support school internet and libraries. This is a bipartisan initiative. You can imagine there are a lot of rural districts across the country that do not have the fiscal resources to provide internet to distant schools. So this began in 1996, mostly around rural initiatives, rural school districts, and then also low socioeconomic districts that cannot afford internet or broadband services. This was designed to close the digital divide between wealthy and low-income communities. There are 2 categories of E-rate funding. Category 1 covers internet access, so think of the monthly internet bill that you pay for in your home. We also pay for that for the school system. Category 2 covers any infrastructure that we're going to need to purchase, any equipment. So for instance, that access point right above your head, every one of your devices is connected to that access point. There's a wire from that access point to a switch that is actually controlling the internet. So these pieces of hardware are what we can purchase out of Category 2 resources. We can also use that for cabling. So last year we purchased Promethean boards. We could use E-rate funding to run new cables through walls to support any new infrastructure that we purchase. This operates on a 5-year funding cycle. So this year the federal government provided a 5-year amount of money for what we will be able to spend. I'll give you some information on that in the future. We do not have to use 1/5 every year. We just have 5 years to spend that amount of money or whatever we feel like we need to purchase. In North Carolina, the federal government covers some percentage, and that percentage differs by school district. And then the state of North Carolina covers the remaining portion. For Cabarrus County Schools, 60% of these funds are covered by the federal government. The other 40% are covered by the state of North Carolina. Cabarrus County Schools will be responsible for $0 on any of these bids. This is a required board action because it does exceed the $250,000 threshold. I should also mention that this proposal reflects our intent to move forward with these bids, but we are not responsible if E-rate funding does not come through. E-rate funding has never not come through. So I want to make sure that it's clear. We are expecting to receive these funds for these bids. We have no reason to believe that they would not. But in the event that E-rate funding does not come through for whatever reason, we would not be responsible for these bids. Just some more perspective, from the 22 through 26 funding cycles, we were allotted $6,006,155 for E-rate spending. We were able to commit and spend $5,991,011.89. So we committed and or spent 99.7% of our funds. There is still some remaining funds. We're still paying for our internet service for the remainder of the school year. So we've got about $85,000 wrapped up still in the remaining internet bills for the rest of this year. But we have committed 99.7% of our funds. For the next 5-year cycle, we have been allotted $7.2 million. So we've got an increase in funding for this next 5-year cycle. Our team has gone ahead and forecasted out how we would spend that $7.2 million that I'm going to share with you in just a minute. The eligible hardware for Category 2 funding is typically the uninterruptible power supplies. I trip over that word every time. Think of that as a redundant backup power source. So if an internet goes down because of a power cable, we want a backup so that we don't lose internet while that is down. The wireless access points, which I directed your attention to just a minute, we have one of those in every single classroom and all the way down the hallways in every school building and in every office so that people can connect to the internet. We do not want to have to share those across classrooms. This is why E-rate funding is here, right? We need to be able to provide enough resources to cover internet connectivity for all of our schools and classrooms. Network switches, as I referenced, are the actual that's the actual work that is connecting our access points to the internet. If you think of the old 1950s telephone operator that had all of the wires that they were disconnecting and reconnecting to connect people's phones, that's what a network switch is doing. It is controlling the internet traffic. And then, of course, the cabling infrastructure. Every single thing that's connected to the internet in somewhere is connected via a cable. That costs a lot of money to run those cables. So what we have done is forecasted out how we would spend these $7.2 million. I share this because the bids that you're going to see accounts for $1.9 million. It seems like a large number on face value, and I wanted to provide perspective that while we are spending over 20% of our eligible E-rate funds in this first year, it's because we are investing in switches, and the switches is by far the largest investment that we have using E-rate funds. We plan to invest in switches, about 1/6 of our switches, 3 times throughout each cycle. So if we invest in switches in years 1, 3, and 5, we do not need to invest in switches in years 2 and 4. So some years we plan to spend many more E-rate funds, some years we'll plan to spend much less E-rate funds. I wanted to show the 5-year cycle because we're not necessarily tying ourselves to this 5-year proposal. I just didn't want any concern around, Carl, you're spending $1.9 million in year 1. Are you going to have enough money to make it through? We've actually, again, we were allotted $7.2 million. Even this plan only accounts for $5.9 million. So we would still have $1.3 million left over in the event that an unexpected or unforeseen expense comes up, in the event that there is some type of inflation, or in the event that there's some type of price increases. We've still got room for that. So I wanted to walk through each of the 3 bids of what I'm proposing that we use our E-rate funds for this next fiscal year. The first item is access points. We received bids from 4 different vendors. The vendors, you can see the vendor number on the left, the vendor name, the price, and some other additional information. We met with a team from finance to review each of these bids. You can see the matrix at the bottom. The overall price counted as 35% of the rubric. The hardware compatibility counted as 30% of the rubric. The support compatibility is 25%. And then any prior experience we had counted as 10%. You can see that PC Solutions Interventions was the lowest price. And we are recommending moving forward with PC Solutions and Intervention. Notice on the right there's some details between Aruba and Extreme. Those are the 2 different vendors who makes the access points. Based on feedback from my team, there is not a significant difference in access points between Aruba and Extreme. So Aruba is a higher quality access point. The difference was negligible. We thought we would go with the lower price. The second bid is for uninterruptible power supplies. We received bids from ANC, CDWG, Encore, PC Solutions and Intervention, and then FAR Technologies. I should mention that when this was originally put up on board notes, the recommendation was for PC Solutions and Intervention. We found out after the fact that quote was actually not on state contract, so it is actually not eligible for E-rate funding. So we reevaluated the bids, and FAR Technologies won. It had the second lowest price. The price point difference was only $6,000 between that and PC Solutions. We do not have any prior experience with FAR Technologies, but at this point they are just delivering a device. There's no necessary support that they're going to offer. Finally, I want to provide some background on network switches. This was what I felt like needed some explanation between the two different solutions. Our entire environment across all of our schools and sites, so keep in mind this is not a school, but we have switches here on this site, we have switches at all of the other sites that necessarily are not schools, but across all of our schools and sites we have Aruba switches. In our bid we specified, you can see at the top in that paragraph, I did not include in that paragraph. We specified Aruba bids or similar, and we're required to use that or similar language by E-rate funding so that we don't select the vendor ahead of time. The tricky thing about choosing or similar is that means vendors can choose a similar different brand. In this case, we received bids for Aruba switches and we received 2 bids for Extreme switches. We met with our finance team 2 weeks ago, and as we start looking at the price differences between the 2 Aruba quotes and the price differences in the 2 Extreme quotes, you can see that there's a significant difference. So we paused discussions before we evaluated the rubric, and I asked my team to give us some information on the return on investment of Aruba and why we would be choosing Aruba based as opposed to why we would be choosing Extreme. So we took 2 weeks to look at that return on investment. I want to provide some of that background with you. I should mention, we would not purchase Aruba just because it is the nicer or better product. Right now we have Aruba in all of our schools. When you have a switch, what is helpful to think about is I have an engineering team of 3 that supports all of our network connectivity across all of our schools. There is a programming language, syntax, architecture, and environment that our engineering team uses across each of our switches. The syntax and programming for Aruba is different than the syntax and programming for Extreme. So there would be some cost associated with either training our staff or hiring additional staff if we were to choose Extreme. The second component between Aruba and Extreme that is important to think about is Aruba parts have a lifetime warranty and they are built on a chassis with interchangeable parts. So when we purchase an Aruba switch, if any part goes bad on that Aruba, it has a lifetime warranty. We can swap that piece out and put in a brand new piece. Keep in mind our goal is to replace these every 10 years. So if any part goes bad with Aruba, we have a lot of confidence that we'll be able to keep these parts working in our schools over that 10-year period. The Extreme parts are not interchangeable. If any part goes bad on the Extreme switch, then we have to replace the entire Extreme switch. So while the Extreme is a much cheaper price point, it is a much riskier investment for us because if the Extreme switch goes down, then we are paying either out of additional E-rate funds or out of local funds to purchase new parts for that. Based on that feedback from my team, they felt very strongly that we needed to continue with Aruba. Not only do we have the lifetime warranty, the interchangeable parts, but it's on a system that our current engineering team knows and understands. So they felt like we need to stay with Aruba. You can see that the cheaper of the 2 Aruba options was with ANC at a significantly lower price point than CDWG. So our recommendation is to move forward with Aruba as opposed to Extreme and to go with ANC as the vendor. That was a lot of background. I'll give you momentarily an opportunity for some questions. This page just provides some more justification around that same talking points. So again, our district network is already standardized on Aruba. This is what our engineering team already knows how to support. If we were to switch to Extreme, it would entail some costs in professional development, in training, or in additional staff. It's a single platform that simplifies supporting and troubleshooting. We have existing spare inventory for Aruba. If a part were to go down, we would be able to replace it with no loss of downtime. And then of course, if we were to transition to Extreme, you can see some of the challenges that we would have. This would introduce a second switching platform. For the next 10 years, we would have to support 2 different environments. This would require staff training. There would be new monitoring, documentation, and management processes. We have 19 technicians that support our schools. They would all also need to understand Extreme. This would create a mixed vendor network, and then it could require additional staff capacity or training. So I want to provide sufficient background on the differences in those 2 based on the difference in price. I should mention, even with the drastic difference in prices for the switches, we still plan to have more than enough E-rate funds to cover that difference. We are planning on using Aruba. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you for the presentation. Board members, let's go with Greg first, then Pam.
I appreciate your detailed responses to all my last-minute questions. You're very, very patient with me.
Sure.
I have a couple that come up just based on this presentation, and you may not know the answer to this one. Do we know why Aruba was originally chosen as the platform?
I do not. I would strongly imagine it has to do with the chassis. So again, when you purchase an Aruba chassis, all of the parts have a lifetime warranty. If any part goes bad, you simply take that one part out and you can replace it with, again, a warranted part. When that extreme switch goes down, it's my understanding that if any part of it goes down, the whole extreme switch goes down. That's why it's a cheaper option in some districts that would not have, if you don't have E-rate funding, it might make a lot of sense to go with the cheaper option. If you're a private industry and that's the one that you can afford, it might make more sense. It is a riskier option for us because if that switch goes down and we, in year 5 of this E-rate cycle, and we don't have the funding to purchase a new switch, then we would be without a switch at that school. So my hunch is Aruba was chosen for the interoperability, the fact that you can switch out those components, and the fact that it has a lifetime warranty.
Okay. And I know that our state has passed a law recently. We've got to report back how our IT equipment is faring, how reliable it is. We probably don't have any of that data yet. But is there any data on the cost of ownership between these two devices over the lifetime?
That's a great question. We plan a 10-year refresh cycle for these, and that's only because we've always had enough E-rate funds to swap them out every 10 years. I don't even know that these would need a 10-year refresh cycle. They could probably go longer than that. 10 years and anything in technology kind of surprised me. Most things in technology have been on a 5, 6, 7, 8 cycle. I do not have details on the return on investment of that. As you can see in our 5-year plan, even if we were to replace 6 to 8 schools 3 times out of the 5 years in the cycle, we would have plenty of funds to replace all of our switches in 10 years. I don't think that quite answered your question. I do not have information on the return on investment of Aruba versus Extreme.
And the last thing I'll just add, I asked you a lot of questions about around the cost between those two different systems, but I did note from the very beginning in your rubric, cost is 35% of that consideration. And so
that's right.
You are putting that as the highest priority when you're evaluating these devices, and I appreciate that. I want to thank you for that.
Absolutely. And we are required to keep cost as the highest. There are just other mitigating components in this case. It really comes down to our team's ability to support it, and then being able to support 2 different systems. And so it really boiled down to compatibility in this case. Aruba is just more compatible for our needs.
Thank you. My question is, and Greg sort of alluded to it, which is what are the reporting requirements once we make these purchases to receive the funding? I'm guessing there's strings attached to the money. So
sure.
I'm just, what do we have to do, or what do you have to do? What does your team have to do to get it?
Yeah, there's 2 different types of reporting that we do. One is a digital learning inventory that we provide to the state of North Carolina every year. That digital learning inventory encompasses all things digital learning across our schools. So it will be, do our schools have one-to-one devices? How many instructional technology facilitators do we have in schools? What is the internet connectivity rates? How many technicians do we have across our school system? So a great deal of data is collected by the state of North Carolina from a digital learning perspective every year. On top of that, E-rate also has requirements for record keeping and auditing purposes. One example of that I've shared with our school board in the past is our Neptune Navigate. We're required to provide, to receive E-rate funding, we're required to provide digital citizenship lessons to students every single year to every single student. You might have heard me discuss this when we talked about artificial intelligence. So how are we training students on artificial intelligence? We infuse it into the same lessons around digital citizenship that we are already teaching students that is required by E-rate funding. So E-rate funding is really contingent on our ability to teach those lessons, and then also, in full transparency, we could be audited after the fact for E-rate funding. E-rate funding, again, is a bipartisan initiative. It did go to the Supreme Court last fall, but it passed 6-3 on a bipartisan initiative. So I have no doubt that E-rate funding would be available if that's where you're going with that question.
Anybody else over here? So I have my question for Mr. Penn. Are you able to? So there's a $1.9 million request to spend, but it's not costing us any local dollars?
Correct.
How do we account for that? Or How are we accounting for that one, or is it on, it's not in our budget, or is it in our,
It's not in your local budget, that's correct.
but it is in the state budget, or it's in the
Yeah,
federal?
it comes through in a state budget amount, and it comes through in federal funding.
So we'll see it when we go through the budget on what you have as federal
Yeah.
and state. Are we saving anything locally by doing the E-rates?
No. No, we're basically a pass-through entity the way this money flows. So the money comes in, as he said, in 5-year segments. I was frankly pleasantly surprised at the amount of the increase that we saw in this funding cycle. I was not expecting that, but that probably reflects the amount of student growth that we've had over that 5-year period. And we now need just to be, as he was just stating, compliant with the data requests that are associated with this, and more importantly, the timing, which is why this became an issue, to make sure we had a commitment by March 31st.
Okay, we're not asking to spend the whole thing, just the 1.9 million for this year.
Correct.
Okay.
The only way this could impact local is if we do not submit by March 31st and we still need to purchase these pieces of equipment. Or, again, if we purchase a system that is not compatible with our current system and it would cost us local funds to support it.
Thank you. Okay, board members, we're looking for a motion and a second that the E-rate spending proposal be approved as presented. Thank you, Pam. Thank you, Sam. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor of, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, that motion passes. So that's our last item for this evening, other than a need for a closed session. So we do have a need for a closed session. I'll need a motion and a second that the board convene in closed session pursuant to General Statute 143-318-11A1 to prevent disclosure of confidential information, including information not considered public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the General Statutes, and to consult with our attorneys pursuant to General Statute 143-318-11A3, and to consider confidential personnel matters pursuant to General Statute 143-318-11A6.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Greg. Do we have a second? Thank you, Sam. Have a motion and a second to convene in closed session. Please, please say aye. Do you agree? Aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, we're going to say goodnight to our listening audience, and we are now in closed session.